On August 14th, 2018, a quiet morning in Frederick, Colorado. The sun had barely risen when police officers arrived at a house on Saratoga Trail. The garage door was shut. The driveway was empty. Inside, the rooms were still. Too still. A call had come in hours earlier. Something wasn't right. A mother and her two little girls had vanished. Their friend had been trying to reach them all morning, but there was no answer. No texts. No calls. No sign of life. A tall man stood at the front door as officers stepped onto the porch. His arms were crossed, his face unreadable. He let them in without hesitation, leading them through the house, talking as he walked. My wife, she was home when I left for work. She said she was taking the kids to a friend's house. His voice was calm, too calm. He walked ahead of the officers, opening doors, showing them empty rooms, pointing out little details. Her shoes are still here. Her purse too. And her medicine, it's all here. In the bedroom, her wedding ring sat on the nightstand. Untouched. The officer turned to him. Did you two have an argument? He shook his head. No, nothing like that. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. But something about his eyes, something was missing. Outside, a neighbor watched from his driveway. He had seen this man before, seen his family outside playing, laughing. It was always the same, a smiling wife, two giggling little girls, and a quiet father who stood off to the side. Today, that man was different. Today he was talking too much, explaining too much. The officer noticed it too. He asked another question, then another. The man answered, but his words lacked something important. It lacked the truth. In just a few hours, the search for a missing mother and her children would take a devastating turn. And the man standing in front of the officers, the one pleading for their safe return, would become the prime suspect in a crime that shouldn't be. What had happened inside that house? And why did the neighbor's security camera show him backing his truck into the garage before sunrise? This is the story of Chris Watts, a husband, a father, and a man with secrets buried deep beneath the Colorado soil. Wait a minute. If your entire family went missing, wouldn't you be the first one desperately searching for them? So why did Chris Watts seem so calm? Chris Watts met Shannon Razusek in 2010. She was confident, outgoing, and full of energy. He was quiet, reserved, and easygoing. They seemed like the perfect match. At least, that's how it started. Shannon had always believed in love. When she met Chris, she felt like she had found a man who would stand by her, no matter what. Their romance moved quickly. By 2012, they were married. By 2013, they had their first daughter, Bella. 2 years later, Celeste was born. On social media, their life looked perfect. Videos of family trips, birthday celebrations, and bedtime stories filled Shannon's Facebook page. She smiled brightly in every post, holding her daughters close, praising her husband, calling him the best thing that ever happened to me. But what people saw online was only half the story. Behind the photos and cheerful captions, there were cracks in the picture-perfect life. Shannon had struggled with health issues for years. She was determined to stay strong, to push through, and to build a life filled with success and stability. She joined an online business, selling health and wellness products, and dedicated herself to making it work. Chris had a steady job at Anadarko Petroleum. He was quiet, methodical, and hardworking. But money was tight. In 2015, the Watts family filed for bankruptcy. Their 5-bedroom house in Frederick, Colorado, once a symbol of success, was now a burden. The bills piled up. The stress grew. Still, Shannon didn't give up. She worked from home, running her business, promoting the products, traveling for conferences. She was always on the move, always networking, always trying to provide the best for her family. Chris was different. He didn't complain, didn't argue, didn't fight back. But something about him had changed. He started working out more, eating healthier, spending more time at work. And then he started pulling away. At first, Shannon thought it was the stress. The bills, the kids, the pressure to succeed. It was all too much. She tried to bring him closer, to remind him of the life they were building. Then, in the summer of 2018, she gave him news that should have changed everything. She was pregnant again. She sent him a video, a soft smile on her face as she held up a tiny shirt that read, "Oops, we did it again." She laughed, excited, hopeful. Chris smiled too, but it didn't reach his eyes. What if the moment that should have brought them together only pushed them further apart? Because while Shannon was celebrating a new life, Chris was already dreaming of another woman, another future, a life where he was free from the one he had built. And soon, that dream would become a plan, one that no one saw coming. If you're still watching, thank you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories. Hit the like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. On August 13th, 2018, a black car pulled into the driveway of the Watts home at 1:48 a.m. The headlights cut through the darkness for a brief moment before shutting off. The driver's door opened. Shannon stepped out. She was exhausted. She had just returned from a business trip to Arizona, but her mind was still racing. She had spent the weekend working, networking, promoting her business. Now, she was back home, back to the place where she thought she was building a future. Her friend Nicole Atkinson watched as Shannon pulled her suitcase from the trunk. "You okay?" Nicole asked. Shannon nodded. "Just tired." She had been feeling off lately, stressed, nauseous, worried about Chris's distance. But she kept pushing forward. Nicole waited until Shannon was inside before driving away. She didn't know it would be the last time she'd see her friend alive. Inside the house, the silence was heavy. Chris was awake, waiting. What happened next? Only two people truly knew, and one of them was gone forever. At 5 a.m., the quiet suburban street was still asleep. The neighborhood was peaceful, unaware of what had just happened inside the Watts home. But someone was awake. A neighbor's security camera captured a dark figure stepping out of the Watts house, and it was Chris. The footage showed him walking to his truck, opening the back door, and stepping inside. He stayed there for a moment. Then he came back out. Then he went in again, loading something, moving something. The truck's interior light flickered on and off as he worked. What was he doing? What was he carrying? As the sun rose over Frederick, Colorado, the world had no idea that a mother and her two little girls were already gone. By 8:30 a.m., Nicole Atkinson was growing worried. Shannon had a doctor's appointment that morning, an important one. She was 15 weeks pregnant. She would never miss it. Nicole sent a text. No response. Another text. Nothing. Then a call. Straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. By 12:10 p.m., she was at the Watts house, knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, listening, waiting. But there was nothing. The house was eerily quiet. Shannon's car was still in the garage. The kids' car seats were inside. Nicole tried calling Chris. She said she was taking the kids to a friend's house, he told her. But why would she leave without her purse? Without her phone? Without telling anyone? Nicole didn't wait any longer. She called the police. At 1:40 p.m., Officer Coonrod from the Frederick Police Department knocked on the Watts front door. Chris answered, his expression unreadable. He was calm, too calm. "Can we come in?" "Yeah, of course," Chris said, stepping aside. The officers walked in, scanning the house. A purse on the counter. Medicine still there. A phone wedged between the couch cushions. The wedding ring on the nightstand. Something was wrong. Chris explained it all away. She must have left in a hurry, maybe took the kids somewhere. But the neighbor wasn't convinced. "There's something off about him," the man whispered to the officer. "He's not acting right." The officers kept searching, but they already knew Shannon and the girls weren't coming back. Because by then, they were already buried. And soon, the truth would start unraveling. By August 14th, the news had spread. A pregnant woman and her two little girls had vanished without a trace. The community was in shock. The media swarmed the quiet streets of Frederick, Colorado. And Chris Watts. He stood in front of the cameras, hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his feet. His voice was steady, too steady. His words were rehearsed, mechanical. If somebody has her, just bring her back, he pleaded. I need to see everybody again. This house is empty right now. It's just me. He paused, as if forcing himself to sound emotional. Her parents were watching. The entire country was watching. Something felt off. Chris didn't look like a desperate husband. He looked like a man trying too hard to act normal. Back at the Watts home, investigators reviewed the neighbor's security footage. That's when the neighbor pulled Officer Coonrod aside. Something isn't right with him, he muttered. Chris had just left, and as soon as he was out of sight, the neighbor shook his head. He's usually not like that. He never talks this much. He never paces. The officers took note. They had seen thousands of cases. The ones who were truly innocent, the ones who had nothing to hide, acted differently. And Chris was acting. By August 15th, Chris was taken in for a polygraph test. He sat in an interrogation room, facing a polygraph examiner. Across from him sat Tammy Lee, a seasoned investigator from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. She had seen it all: liars, killers, men who thought they could outsmart the system. She smiled politely. This is the easiest test you'll ever take, she assured him. As long as you're truthful. Chris nodded. The test began. Do you know where your wife and daughters are? No. A line spiked on the screen. Did you physically harm Shannon in any way? No. Another sharp spike. The test continued, but the result was already clear. When it was over, Tammy folded her hands, leaned in slightly, and said 4 words that made Chris's face turn pale. You already know what happened. Chris shifted uncomfortably. His mouth went dry. We know you're lying, Chris. Chris inhaled deeply. He knew he was cornered. But instead of telling the truth, he gave them something else. A lie. He dropped his head into his hands. She killed them, he mumbled. The detectives glanced at each other. What? Chris took another breath. I saw her smothering Celeste. His voice cracked. Fake emotion. I lost it. I strangled her. Tammy didn't blink. So you're telling us Shannon killed the girls? Yes, Chris nodded. I had no choice. Silence filled the room. The officers knew the truth. Chris Watts wasn't a man who snapped in a fit of rage. He was a man who planned every single move. And now, his carefully crafted lies were starting to crumble. Chris gave the second confession after he had been sentenced. He sat in a cold, gray prison cell, his life reduced to 4 concrete walls and silence. No cameras, no reporters, no pretending. The world had moved on. But the truth? The truth had not yet been told. On February 18, 2019, Chris sat across from investigators from the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. He had agreed to talk, but this time, there would be no lies. A recorder clicked on. Tell us everything, an agent said. Chris exhaled. His voice was low, almost distant. And then, he spoke. She got home around 2 in the morning, he muttered. I was awake. She had no idea. Shannon walked into the bedroom, exhausted from her business trip, thinking she was coming home to her family. She had no idea that while she was gone, Chris had been with someone else. That his mind was already made up. She crawled into bed. A few hours later, Chris leaned over her. I told her I didn't love her anymore. His voice was flat, emotionless. She said I was hurting her. She told me to stop. He wrapped his hands around her neck. She never screamed. His fingers pressed tighter. She couldn't fight back. For 2 minutes, maybe more, she struggled beneath him. But there was no air. No chance. And then, silence. Shannon was gone. But that wasn't the end. Chris sat back, rubbing his face. I don't know what I was thinking, he mumbled. But he did. He had already thought about it long before that night. The girls had woken up. Bella stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. What's wrong with Mommy? Chris hesitated. Mommy's sick, he said. We have to take her to the hospital. He wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet, dragging her down the stairs. Celeste was still too young to understand. But Bella? Bella watched. Chris lifted Shanann's body into his truck. Then, he turned back to the girls. They were waiting for him. He buckled them into the back seat. No car seats. No toys. Just them, sitting there, watching him. The drive to the oil site was quiet. Celeste was the first to go. Chris placed his hand over her nose and mouth. She didn't struggle, he murmured. She just let go. He opened the oil tank and pushed her small body through the 8-inch hatch. Bella saw everything. She knew what was coming. Daddy, no. Chris clenched his fists on the table. She was the only one who talked, he whispered. Daddy, no. Chris placed his hands over her mouth. She struggled, kicked, gasped for air. And then, she was gone too. He opened the second oil tank and put her there too. And just like that, his family had disappeared. Chris buried Shannon in a shallow grave nearby. He covered her with dirt. Then he walked away. He got back in his truck, drove home, and texted his mistress. Chris wasn't an ordinary murderer. He was something else. FBI profiler Candace DeLong studied men like him. Most family annihilators follow a pattern, she explained. There's financial pressure, an affair, a deep desire for a fresh start. Chris had all three, but something didn't fit. Most of them kill themselves afterward, DeLong continued. But Chris? He didn't. That meant only one thing. He never planned on getting caught. But the truth has a way of coming out. And for Chris Watts, there was nowhere left to hide. Let's get a brief view of the trial and sentencing. On August 21st, 2018, the courtroom was silent as the charges were read out loud. 3 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy. 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. The words carried weight. Each charge a reminder of what had been lost. Chris sat emotionless. No tears. No remorse. The death penalty was still legal in Colorado. The prosecution had enough evidence to pursue it. But then, something unexpected. Shanann's family stepped forward. They didn't want another death. No matter what he did, we don't believe in more killing, her father said. Let him live with this. And so, the deal was made. Chris Watts pleaded guilty to everything in exchange for life in prison. No trial. No appeals. No way out. He would never see freedom again. But was that really justice? November 19th, 2018 was the sentencing day. The courtroom was packed with reporters, grieving relatives, strangers who wanted to witness the moment Chris Watts would finally answer for his crimes. He sat with his head down, his hands shackled in front of him. One by one, Shanann's family spoke. Her father's voice shook with rage. You took my daughter, my grandbabies, and my grandson who I'll never get to meet. He paused. And for what? Shanann's mother didn't hold back her tears. Shannon loved you. Your daughters loved you. And you threw them away like they were nothing. The judge's voice was cold and final. You carried out the most inhumane and heartless crime I've ever seen in this courtroom. And then, 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. An additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy. And 36 more years for tampering with their bodies. No chance of appeal. No chance of parole. No chance of ever walking free. Chris was let out of the courtroom, chains rattling with every step. By December 3rd, 2018, Chris Watts was secretly transferred out of Colorado. For security reasons, his exact location was hidden. 2 days later, it was revealed he was in Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, a maximum security prison, a place for the worst of the worst. There were no more cameras, no more interviews, just a small cell, a hard bed, and endless time. Chris would later say that he thought about his family every day. But did he really? Or was it just another lie? Some crimes fade over time. This one didn't. People still talk about it. Still analyze every second of those last days. But why? Maybe because Chris Watts didn't look like a killer. No criminal record. No history of violence. Just a father. A husband. A man who smiled for the cameras while hiding a secret darker than anyone could imagine. He didn't just take lives, he destroyed an illusion. A picture-perfect family, shattered in an instant. Shanann's Facebook was filled with love, smiling photos, happy moments. But behind every perfect post, there was something unseen. Financial struggles, marital tension, a growing distance. It's a reminder, what we see online isn't always real. Sometimes, the people who seem the happiest are the ones suffering the most. Now, the question is yours. What do you think led to this tragedy? Could it have been prevented? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like this aren't just about the past. They're warnings for the future. Thanks for watching. If you found this story intriguing, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime cases. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.